So it's time to change things up on the channel just for a little while. We're moving away from 2,000 point games to 1,000 points. A much harder points level to list build for. So let's build a Necron Canoptek Court List. And it's coming right up.
Necrons!
One of them two, I'm not sure which. Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, here we go. I'm looking forward to this. We are going to play some 1,000 point games. When I say we, I mean Richard from CM Wargames and myself. This is going to be a bit of a change for the channel because previously we've always played 2,000 points, or at least in 10th edition so far. The main reason we are switching to 1,000 points is because I have my Dominion War tournament coming up in August. So we're going to do a bit of a practice run at playing 1,000 points to get an idea of the timing, how the terrain is going to work, how the missions are going to work at that points level. So it's a bit of an experiment. However, I have had quite a few comments of people asking me about 1,000 point Necron lists. So hopefully this little series of list building videos and battle reports is going to help you guys, because that is what this channel is all about. And if you're not subscribed yet and you do want to learn about Necrons and more, then please subscribe, press the bell button so you don't miss a notification. Boy, it's been a long time since I said that. Now, if you can't tell, this video is not scripted. I'm just doing this off the cuff, off the top of my head, so it may not be quite as concise as some of my others, but hopefully you'll still enjoy it. So yeah, Necron Codex, 1,000 points, and I have decided my first 1,000 points list is going to be the Canoptek Court, and there's two reasons for that. The main reason is because I've just finished painting my Canoptek Tomb Sentinel / Tomb Stalker, and I want to play it. So that's the main reason, because of course, you know, Canoptek Court is probably the best one to play that model in. The other reason is because I abandoned my Canoptek Court list at 2,000 points. I was playing that like every week. I had a lot of success with my Canoptek Court list, and whilst I did sort of survive the points increases to Technomancer in that list, I didn't survive the next update in the recent Pariah Nexus update. So I abandoned that. I've been playing Hypercrypt Legion at 2,000 points very successfully, and yeah, it definitely seems to be more competitive in that range. But as I said, today it's about 1,000 points. Now, 1,000 points list building in a lot of ways is much harder than 2,000 points. The table is exactly the same in terms of the size and the terrain in 1,000 points to 2,000 points. So you've got a bigger area of the board to cover with less points. And of course, because you have less points, you have less options in what units you can take, especially those good units like, well, let's say Locust Heavy Destroyers. In my Hypercrypt Legion list, I have 3 units of 3. Why not? It's probably the best units that we have in this codex for the points. 150 points for 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers with those 3 big guns that can do a lot of damage, as long as you don't roll 2s to hit. I have moved, so it's going to be 3s, 3 2s. However, in the Canoptek Court, of course, you still can't roll 2s to hit, but it is a unit which made it into my list because of the points level. So let's talk about that. Now, I do like to have a theme when I'm building my lists. It's the way I prefer to list build. I can still make a competitive list with a theme, and in my Canoptek Court list, the theme usually starts around 3 units of Wraiths with 3 Technomancers. Of course, quite expensive now in points, and with some of the nerfs to actions, not quite as good as they were. However, they are very thematic for a Canoptek Court army to have Canoptek Wraiths. So it's possible to take the better units with a particular theme in a particular dynasty or detachment, as they're now called. But that doesn't always pan out, and when you're taking a smaller list, all of those things get amplified quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a 1000 points list in the Canoptek Court to make it fairly competitive, or at least to have a chance on the table, but I'm going to have to make some compromises, of course, because of the lower points level. Now, I do personally love playing 1000 point games, and the reason why I like to play 1000 point games is because it is a bit of a challenge, but also it's a perfect opportunity to experiment with things. You know, maybe things that you wouldn't put into a 2000 points list because you fear it may not be like the optimal thing to put in. But at 1000 points, it really doesn't matter, because at 1000 points, it's quite often that you get a bad matchup where maybe you don't have the right tools for the job against a particular opponent, especially if they've gone down one route. Let's say that you come up against someone who's got an all-vehicle army and you've just got one big gun. The chances are you're not going to do quite so well against that army than you would if you had an infantry army opponent. Maybe your army might be able to deal with that army better. Do you get what I mean? So unlike at 2000 points, where you generally have like all different tools to maybe cope with all different types of enemies that you might face, at 1000 points that's not always the case. So we need to try to build a list which can cope reasonably well with what you might face, but also to have a reasonable chance of winning the mission, because of course 40k is very much so about the mission. Okay, so hopefully I haven't waffled too much. I've just had a sip of coffee and we're ready to go to share my 1000 point Canoptek list. So I'm going to run through how I came up with this list to maybe give you some ideas of how you could build your list. Now, my starting point for this list actually was not Wraiths, but Doomstalkers, because Doomstalkers are really good in the Canoptek Court. You generally have them in your deployment zone, so you benefit from all of the re-rolls, and their gun can put out some pain, although obviously not as devastating as maybe heavy destroyers, but that's why you take multiples of these. In my 2000 points list, I have 3 of them. This list though, however, I just have 1. Now, I've only put 1 of these in my list because I'm quite experienced playing the Canoptek Court and I know what sort of damage output these have. They can do some damage on vehicles, however they are generally better for elite type units, you know, units with 3 wounds ultimately. So the Doomstalker is very good, but it's not exactly a powerhouse vehicle killing unit. 3 of them, or maybe 2 of them combined, is a lot better. You know, shooting at one vehicle, they can hurt the vehicle. However, at 1000 points, I just feel a commitment of 2 of them, especially when we have to look at scoring mission objectives, is just a bit too much. So what I went for is 1 Canoptek Doomstalker and then 2 single Locust Heavy Destroyers. Now, I could have taken a unit of 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers, but I'm not taking these Locust Heavy Destroyers just for the big gun, although that's very useful, but also because we need board control, and a unit of 2 isn't going to give me as much board control as 2 units of 1. Also, if I need to do an action, then a unit of 2 doing an action, they're not going to be able to shoot. But if I have 2 single ones, one can do the action and at least the other one can shoot. So that's my heavy support, 1 Doomstalker and 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers. Now, of course, I am going to take either the Tomb Sentinel or the Doomstalker. To be honest, I don't care which one I take. I plan to play them both anyway. Of course, they are legends. We know they're legends, but that's okay. I'm not playing in an official tournament where you can't use legends. At my Dominion War tournament, which I've got coming up, you can play legends, so it's not going to be a problem. I don't care which one I play. At this stage, I was thinking it will probably be the Tomb Stalker, which is 130 points. But to be fair, that does change just because I don't quite have enough points left. So, well, let's go there right now. I've got one Tomb Sentinel in the list. As I said, I don't care which one I played. I'm going to play them both anyway. The Tomb Sentinel, 115 points. And I've gone for this one just because it was easier for me to squeeze it into the list with the other units that I've taken. Okay, so Canoptek Wraiths. Now, as I said, I usually play 18. Each unit has got a Technomancer. So I was going to play one unit of 6 with a Technomancer in my list. I did, however, really consider, mainly because of some comments which I had on my channel about a 1,000 point list with 2 units of 3 Wraiths in it. But I think the Technomancer is needed with the Wraiths, and whilst 2 units of 3 would give you maybe some more board control, I wouldn't want to put a Technomancer in each unit. So having one unit maybe with the Technomancer, one without, for me it just sort of didn't make sense. So I've gone for one big unit of Wraiths, 6 Wraiths with particle casters, and attached to it a Technomancer. And I'm going to give the Technomancer the Infiltrate enhancement. I'm going to infiltrate this unit onto an objective and just try to hold that objective for the whole of the game if I can. Now, Wraiths certainly can hold their own. I mean, they don't do an awesome amount of damage, but they can at least hold their own and survive, especially with the Technomancer there. Now, regarding the particle casters on the Wraiths, of course, great for shooting your opponent in combat, but of course we can no longer do actions whilst in combat. So this makes the Wraiths not quite as good as they were when you're on an objective and you're locked into assault. So we are going to need to do some actions, and what I was thinking was one of the cheapest ways to do this is to have some Scarab Swarms. So have one unit of Scarabs, unit of 3, just behind my Wraiths, maybe behind a piece of terrain, hiding, in range, of course, of the Technomancer, so that they have OC1. And then, of course, do some actions. Now, we are going to need some battle line units. You can't, well, you can take a list without battle line units, but you're pretty much guaranteeing that you're going to give up 20 points if your opponent takes the secret mission. I feel like you have to at least have one battle line unit. Now, something which I haven't experimented with yet in 10th edition is Immortals with Tesla and a Plasmancer. I've not played it yet, so I thought this was a perfect opportunity for me to play it. 10 Immortals with Tesla carbines and a Plasmancer, a fast-moving assault gun that sustained 2 on a 5+. Critical hits, of course, on a 5+ from the Plasmancer. Plus the Plasmancer can do some mortal wounds as well. Seems like a fun unit to play. I know people have been raving about this unit. As I said, I just haven't played it yet, but I think this is a good opportunity to play it, and I think it will work well in this list. Okay, so the list is nearly finished, and this is where I decided to switch from a Tomb Stalker to a Tomb Sentinel just to free up some extra points. I've got 30 points left for 1,000 points. 30 points buys me a Locust Destroyer, an awesome unit for the points. I've made a whole video about Locust Destroyer tactics, and I will link that up for you at the end of this one. But that gives me a 1,000 points Canoptek Court List, and this is how it's going to work. The Doomstalker is going to go on my home objective and try to get good line of sight, and then depending on the mission and the terrain, my 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers are going to flank the Doomstalker I'm actually thinking not right next to the Doomstalker like I would play if I had a 2000 points list. These two units are going to have to go out quite a bit to hopefully stop sort of deep striking units coming in, etc., just to take up some board control. Now, of course, they will be looking for the best line of sight possible, and potentially without having to move to get that line of sight to help them hit, because I always roll twos. I've got to stop that. Okay, so we've got 3 heavy destroyers, and I'm going to be shooting at this one here with the big guns.
I don't fancy his chances here, if I'm honest with you.
You'll be alright. You'll be alright.
I will. I think I will.
I have moved, so it's going to be 3s. 3 2s. Hey! The Wraiths are going to infiltrate to try to get onto a central objective. Now, regarding the Tomb Sentinel, I think I'm going to deep strike it in, so that will go into reserve and come in on turn 2. Sounds like a fun way to get him on the table where I want him, and deep strikers, of course, are always useful. My Immortals are just going to push forward. They're going to advance onto an objective that the Wraiths aren't onto, to hopefully give me that power matrix in the centre of the board. Of course, the Tomb Sentinel could come down in the central position if I wanted to, or I could try to get it in my opponent's deployment zone just to give them a bit of a distraction. Now lastly, my single Locust Destroyer isn't going to have a fixed role. It's going to change depending upon the mission and my opponent and the terrain. It's almost like a little throwaway unit. I could just keep it in my deployment zone if my opponent has quite a few deep strikers, for example, or maybe I could just push it forward to try to do some of the secondary objectives. I will be playing tactical objectives because I think they're the most fun. I enjoy them the most. I don't like playing fixed objectives. Now, potentially it might be better to play fixed objectives, but personally I don't like it. So I will be playing tactical objectives. Now, unlike my previous lists, I don't have too many deep striking units coming in like Hexmark Destroyers and Death Marks, but that's okay because we are experimenting, we are having fun, and like I said, at 1000 points you just can't have it all. So I think this list is going to do quite well on the table. I think it's got a good chance, but I'd love to know what you think. Let me know what you think of this list in the comments box below. Now, of course, I am going to be playing this list. There's going to be a battle report on the channel shortly, and I may not necessarily be playing against orcs. Yes, Richard might get the Tyranids out. So, I can't wait for that game. It's going to be a lot of fun. In the meantime, here are my 10th edition Necron list building videos at 2000 points, and here are my battle reports for 10th edition for you to check out next. Hopefully that's okay. I totally winged that.